Hey everybody, this is episode 4. We want to welcome you to our first night episode. This is the first time we've ever recorded in the evening. And this is also the first episode we've recorded where the coronavirus has been in the United States. And now we're on lockdown and the hysteria is in full swing.
Right.
The first episodes, the first 3 that we did, the coronavirus was a thing, but it was in China and it was kind of something that was talked about in the news, but we really weren't. It wasn't something that we were affected necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but
yeah,
it's been
and now
crazy.
we for sure are affected.
Yeah.
I think I have not left our house in like 9 days at this point,
Yeah.
So you went to the grocery store for us, but
Yeah, that
other
was
than
scary.
that, we went on a couple walks. We play in the backyard. Thank
We were
God
able
we
to
have
go
a
to the beach.
backyard.
We went to the beach
and now they
before.
closed it down.
Yeah, that's a $1,000 fine now if you go to the beach.
Really?
That's what I heard.
I don't even know that.
That could be false information, but that's what I read on the internet, and everything is right on the internet. So
That's
yeah,
what Abraham Lincoln said anyways.
That's true.
Yeah. So we're kind of hunkered in. We're cozy with you guys here. It's 9 p.m. Our kids are in bed. We're just taking it one day at a time because I guess there's nothing to do except all we can do, which we're stocked. We're following the rules. And now it's like, all right, God's in control.
Yeah.
And, just trying to trust him. But
To get into the spirit of the season, I've watched Contagion twice now.
And we tried to watch The Manchurian Candidate. Is that what
Yeah.
it's called? Okay. I had to turn that off because I'm like, we're living in a horror movie right now. And he's just sitting there. I'm like, are you enjoying this? And he's like,
I've seen
yeah,
it.
why? I've already seen it. I'm like, because I'm starting to have a mild panic attack. Like, geez, can we not? So I'm trying to watch Friends, and I'm trying to watch The Office, and I'm trying to watch other happy things, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, I don't know, Hot Dog Adventures, whatever the new one's called.
It's all the same.
Frozen 2.
If you haven't seen
I love
Contagion,
Frozen
though,
2. Don't watch Contagion. Don't encourage them to watch
well,
Contagion. It's horrible.
I can't remember what year that movie came out, but
Eerily real.
it's a respiratory virus. They talk about social distancing and it's interesting.
But
Scary.
we're gonna beat it.
And they beat it in the movie. And if anything works in Hollywood, it'll work in real life. If we've learned nothing from the movies, there's always gonna be a happy ending.
I know.
So
We're gonna make it. And 3 countries I read today, they're on the other side of it, and things are opening back up, and they're going back to normal life. And this is not the first time that viruses have happened, and we'll make it.
So yeah,
We'll be
safety
all right.
to everybody, health to everybody. Make sure you keep your social distancing. We're gonna get right into our topic today, which is pretty appropriate, I think.
I think so. I was kind of thinking that today.
And what is that topic?
So when it comes to ministry, burnout is definitely not a new topic. I mean, every conference you go to, every blog you read, every podcast, every resource designed for people in ministry, there is a portion of burnout in there. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to keep that topic of burnout, but we're going to contrast it against compassion fatigue. And we're going to talk about it in more of a broader scope, I guess, because we're going to talk about information actually from this. Did you know there's a Stress Institute of America?
No, but I believe it.
Yeah. So they do a lot of research and tips on how to handle and manage stress and anxiety and all of that stuff. And so, what we're going to talk about today is not actually just meant for pastors. In fact, it's written more for, I guess you could say, clinicians who see patients regularly and are struggling with the compassion fatigue and burnout. So then we'll take that idea and apply it for our scope, which is ministry and youth pastors. But yeah, it's real. It for sure is a real thing. But I think a lot of times, how people use the terms like stress and anxiety interchangeably. I think people use compassion fatigue and burnout interchangeably a little bit, but they're 2 different things.
Okay. How would you describe or define burnout versus, let's start with burnout. How would you define burnout?
So burnout this is the Stress Institute's definition. They say cumulative process marked by emotional exhaustion and withdrawal associated with increased workload and institutional stress, not trauma related. So it's this burnout, it seems like comes over time, whereas compassion fatigue is it says it's also called vicarious traumatization or secondary traumatization, the emotional residue or strain of exposure to working with those suffering from the consequences of traumatic events. It differs from burnout, but can coexist. Compassion fatigue can occur due to exposure on one case, or it can be due to a cumulative level of trauma. So it seems that compassion fatigue is more like seasonal. Like it's when we're in a really tough season and maybe we're dealing with a particularly difficult class of students, or we have just, because I talk to you obviously about my ministry, but just like when you have like run-ins with people like on a consistent basis, like this season, it just seemed like there was like an issue with a parent, then an issue with a student, then an issue with like just like emotionally exhausting things. Whereas burnout, it seems like that is like bad habits over a really long period of time. And then you're all of a sudden you've been in ministry for 5 years and you hate everyone and you hate everything and you have nothing left to give. So
can burnout even come to, because I feel like that term is used in all jobs or most jobs probably, but is it kind of like you're doing too much too fast, or is that kind of the same idea of burnout?
And that's the thing. So like when youth pastors talk about burnout, I think they just, like there's this idea out there that it's just like you said, you did too much and like you got overwhelmed because you were overly busy and now you're just tired. I would call that exhaustion. But burnout, well, it depends, because burnout carries with it some like here's some symptoms of it. And this feels a little different than like, I'm just tired, right? So feelings of being ineffective, callous, negative, emotional, absent, sarcastic, stuck. And so
I think you just described my entire life.
Also parenting. Hey, when it was just the two of us, I felt great.
Yeah, I'll go with that. All right. Moving on.
Ew. You hesitated.
Why did you hesitate?
The compassion fatigue, it's symptoms that are similar to burnout, but the onset is faster because it's about what's presently going on. Okay. It's a presently difficult student. It's a presently difficult parent. It's a presently difficult season or leadership turnover or whatever, and you're just over it. And it could lead to burnout, right? So that's the thing, is that you want to catch that compassion fatigue soon and identify it and figure out the root cause of it and identify your symptoms so that it doesn't go unchecked to then become burnout, because burnout's harder to recover from. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just like go on vacation, like you'll feel fine. It's like, like you've become callous, you've become impenetrable, you've become like everyone sucks, everyone is going to drain the life out of you, every situation is bleak, and you just have this, and it's so hard to come back from that.
Yeah. And that's kind of when people get into the point of their job too, where not for everybody, but a lot of times they think, well, if I made more money, I could deal with this better. I remember I had a boss one time tell me more money is not going to make you happy. Because I was a little disgruntled at the job I was at, and I kept on saying, I need a raise, just messing with her, but at the same time I was serious. But she's like, more money is not going to cure your problems here. And at first I thought, well, how much money are we talking about? I don't know if we're in the same ballpark, but it's true though, because I did stick it out there for at least another year. I got several raises, and every time it was a very momentary excitement, and then this job's still lame.
Right. Well, and then
I was in it, just didn't want to be there. And
the opposite is true. Like if you're making very little money but you love your job and you're healthy and you know, it's a good, you would do that job regardless, you
Right.
know, because it's life-giving. And here's the thing is that a lot of times, so here's the stages of burnout, because here's where we all start with enthusiasm. We all started our job enthusiastic, and maybe
You'd
like,
hope so, at least.
well, I feel like for a lot of youth pastors, like they're like psyched out of their minds,
Yeah.
being like in their early 20s, and they like land their first youth pastor job, and they had probably come up through the ministry, and like now they're like so excited. And so it's like this enthusiasm, like sky's the limit, blue skies ahead, I'm gonna change everyone's life, I'm gonna change the world. And then they get into this stage of stagnation, to where maybe they've been doing it for a while and they feel like they've conquered some hills, and they feel like they've made some change and done some good things. But then it's kind of like, where else is there to go? And then the next stage after stagnation is frustration, to where just like you start to look, well, I should be making more money,
Right.
and why can I not hire any staff? And I haven't received a promotion, and I haven't, you know, nobody recognizes my efforts, blah, you know. And then if you get to the last stage of burnout is apathy, to where you just are like, whatever, doesn't matter. I remember a long time ago, I was talking to this lady, and her husband was interviewing for a pastor position, and they had come from a really unhealthy church. And, you know, I said, well, what are you hoping to get from the church? Like, what is your, and she just said, doesn't matter what I want. I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to. And it was like, wow, like burnout, like for sure.
Yeah.
Like, because it was just this apathetic view of like, well, we're here and we're going to do a job, but it doesn't matter what I want. It doesn't matter what I like, you know, it has no, you know, bearing on how things turn out, which was such a sad place to see. But
Very jaded.
for sure. But I think we all have the real potential to get there.
Yeah.
The one of the most interesting things that I was reading from the Stress Institute of America was,
Do they have a mascot?
what would it be? It would have to be something like very non-stressed, right? Or are you?
Oh, true. A sloth, probably, then. They don't seem stressed about anything.
No.
Although they should be stressed about everything.
Well, they could get eaten very
That's what
easily.
I mean. That was a really big rabbit hole. Or rabbit trail. Or both.
So Mother Teresa.
Okay.
Here, I didn't know this. She was this is great leadership from her part. So she wrote in her plan to her supervisors that it was mandatory for her nuns to take an entire year off. So an entire year sabbatical from their duties every 4 to 5 years to heal from the effects of their caregiving work. Like, whoa, that's incredible. And a lot of us, like, so looking at that leadership model from Mother Teresa makes me like wonder about the youth pastor or pastor turnover rate. You know what I mean? Because if they're doing every 4 to 5 years, they're taking a year off, which is like, wow, that's so generous and
Right.
so cool. But, you know, I don't know what the current turnover rate is of youth pastors, but for a while, everyone was saying 18 months, which I'd like to think it's increased since then, when maybe we've gotten our act together of how we like care for pastors a little bit better. But I just think that's really like, whoa, like she saw the toll that it was taking to care for. And that's what we do as pastors. We just care for people. And, you know, when I start to notice myself getting to that compassion fatigue place, like I wouldn't say I've gotten to that complete apathetic burnout. Like I'm just like, who cares? Whatever, doesn't matter. I haven't been there, but I've stewed in the pool of compassion fatigue for a little bit. And some of the signs and symptoms for me are I see people as a life sucker. And that's so sad because that's my job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like if I'm walking down the hall sometimes and I see someone coming, I'm like, what do you want from me? Oh no, I have nothing to give you. I have nothing left. And I feel like I start to get anxiety of like, what are you going to ask me to do? Like, even if it's just, you know,
Talking at you.
yeah, like just being a sounding board and giving you attention.
Right.
You know,
And you and I have talked about this many times, but I feel like society and maybe it's always been this way, I'm just now realizing it, but so many people are the here I am, not the there you are.
Yeah.
And when they see you, they come up to you with the here I am. Now
ask me about my weekend.
Yeah, or
ask
I'm just
me
going to
about
flat
everything.
out tell you everything because...
But there was a point where I was like, yes, like tell me everything. I want to know about you. I care about you, you know, and that's because that's the first stage.
Mm-hmm.
You're enthusiastic. And then over time, as people take and take and take, if you're not in a season where there's any giving, that is where compassion fatigue is just sort of like, oh, well, okay, great. I don't care about, you know, what's going on in your family. But and one of my best friends and I were talking about this the other day because she's not even a pastor, but she's experienced major compassion fatigue. And she said, I'll find myself scripting of what I know the appropriate social response for those things is. So like someone comes up and is like, oh my gosh, like, my kid got suspended. I'm so upset, blah, 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 blah. Oh my goodness, that must be really hard. I'm so sorry. And she's like, but I don't feel compassion. She's like, I feel numb. I feel like, who cares?
Right.
Like, I don't care. What do you want from me? She goes, but I'm aware enough to know, okay, let me find social response number 435. Okay. And then she spits it out. And I feel like we can get like that in ministry of just like, oh, your boyfriend broke up with you and you're in 7th grade. I am so sorry. That must be hard. Oh, find something meaningful to say, even though I could care less, you know? And then, but it wasn't always that way.
Right.
It's hard to know like where to go with that kind of stuff because, I mean, other than maternity leave, which was way worse than being at work. I mean,
your
getting
youth group of one. Talk about sucking the life out of you.
Yeah, literally and figuratively, you know.
Okay.
Am I right? But it's like,
no big breaks. No 1 year off every 4 or 5 years.
So then what do we do? So it's like, okay,
and that's not,
I want to work for Mother Teresa.
Right.
She'd
Obviously,
be the best
that's
boss
great
ever.
that she does that for, or did that for her employees, but the reality is we're not all going to get that.
Yeah.
Even that, what would that be, 25% or 20% of your year would be off.
What?
1 year every 4 or 5 years would be 20 or 25% of the time during that 5 years that you had off.
Oh, Jeff, it's too late for such fractions.
Mathematics. But that would, or okay, the equivalent to put it in maybe easier to digest terms, maybe every 4 months you get a month off.
Okay.
Now that would be pretty, intense to be able to have that. Everyone would love that.
Yeah.
But not realistic.
Not realistic.
Even if it was once every 5 months getting a full month off.
Well, and especially because most youth pastors are one men or women shows. Like, you know what I mean? We're like,
who's going to fill in?
Yeah.
And that would be hard too. I'll be back in a month.
Me, full time with my benefits and when it works. So what do we do then? If we feel emotionally blunt, if we feel numb, if we feel like we're losing our enthusiasm and now we're moving from this frustration to apathy. Another symptom is feeling like we're working harder but accomplishing less. That's a really big one that the Stress Institute notes. Routinely feeling bored or disgusted. I love that one. Disgusted though. Like, oh my gosh, like I totally have
I never
felt
feel
that.
bored. Although right now in lockdown I feel a little boredom, but
have you felt disgusted? Like just like
yeah, I could probably say certain things.
Like it's like your heart is hard and like if someone's like hurt or something, you're like, oh, now I have to fix it.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, me neither. Anyways, or being irritated easily, frustrated easily. Those. I think you can't blend parenting with this.
And that's the problem though. Kidding. I feel like any parents out there, you can probably relate. I can go from happy as a clam to super irritated in like milliseconds.
Right.
Because your kids, they know how to push your buttons, and
Yeah.
your spouse knows how to push your buttons. And yeah, you can just turn on a dime.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be classified as compassion fatigue or burnout.
I don't know, but somewhere in the neighborhood for
I
sure.
guess. Yeah. Maybe
And it's hard, like we said. So it's like, well, you can't take a month off of parenting. You can't take a month off of your job. You can't take a month off of your ministry.
Right.
So then what can we do? And there's a few things that, you know, like I feel like a really hot buzzword right now is like self-care.
Yeah.
And I've heard so many people give their take on self-care, and what's his name? Mike Foster, he came and did a staff development day with us, and he has this formula where he says every hour, every day, every week, every month, every year. And that's kind of his schedule for self-care. So it's like if you're at work, every hour he takes a break to focus on something for him. So maybe it's like, I'm going to take a little walk around. I'm going to get a good cup of coffee. I'm going to whatever that might be for you. And then every day, where can I find that half hour, whatever, to exercise, because that's what makes me feel really good, or to read something I really enjoy, or be in complete silence. You know, I really enjoy that, the complete silence. And then every week. So is there a way that you can work in self-time into your week? Like work a half day, one of the days. And while your head pastor might not give you a month off, like one thing we've always said at North Coast is you are the most important person in your ministry. So self-care being worked into your work schedule, I don't think is completely, because people will be, I don't have enough time. Okay, well then just work half a day on Thursday. And then the other half day is self-care, you know, because our organization, North Coast, we highly, highly value that, because we know kind of like our tagline that healthy leaders create healthy teams, and healthy teams create healthy churches. You are the most important person in your ministry. And that sounds so counterintuitive, because it's like, no, we're supposed to focus on others, but it's like, with what?
Mm-hmm.
What could you give them?
Nothing left to give. So.
Right. Then you're that at the bottom on apathy. And then they would have said, well, you should have been caring for yourself this whole time, you know, because nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah. And
You
in
have
their
to do it
defense,
yourself.
not everybody knows you
Of
need
course,
it.
no.
So there are those people that will come up. There's a couple I offhand I can think of in our church that you specifically, because they, you know, being the pastoral role, they'll come up to you and how are you doing? And those are treasures. And I know the two individuals you're probably thinking
I know of two.
And they just go out of their way to do that, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And is so considerate and just shows so much about where their heart is, but that's rare, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel like they are my biggest fans. And I've even told our associate pastor, like, if I ever die, can you have these two people speak at my funeral? Because man, they love me. Like I've never been loved before, other than by you, of course.
No, I think they love you more than I do. Hearing how great they are.
I mean, yeah. And that was the other thing I was going to say. So Mike Foster's schedule, every hour, every day, every week, every month, every year. And every year was like his Hawaiian vacation or whatever. Mm-hmm. But, you know, do scope it for your abilities. You know, we can't all take a Maui vacation every single year. And his kids are older now.
Especially when you're under lockdown, you can't even leave your house.
I know. So I was laying in the backyard on a blanket and I felt like I was on vacation yesterday. It was like dog poop to my left, you know. It was just...
We don't even have a dog.
We don't even have a dog. Whose poop was it? I don't know. But the other one is what I was going to say. So self-care, I don't want to go too deep into that because I feel like everybody's talking about self-care right now. There's 1,000,000,005 resources out there on self-care. You just have to do it. You know, and self-care looks differently for everybody. But one thing I've been really, really absorbing lately, like kind of mentioning those two people that you're like, oh yeah, they're always going out of their way, is it's hard to give compassion when you're not receiving any. And so posturing yourself around people who give you compassion. Because I feel like we're always like kind of need to keep a stiff upper lip in ministry. And I know that we're vulnerable for sure. And we are transparent in our messages and things like that. But letting people into the very inner core of who we are, that's reserved for probably a few people. But like, is there anyone in our life that is doling out compassion to us, you know, not just telling us, well, you know, just get up by your bootstraps and keep on going? Because I feel like that is usually an expectation that we're like, yep, be vulnerable, but yep, be tough. Yep, be vulnerable, but keep on going. Yep, be transparent, but come on, you got this, you know? And we do need to keep running this race. But personally, I want to keep running, and I want to keep going, but I want a cheerleader on the sidelines. And I do have one. Boop.
Cheesy.
But but really, I mean, like, I feel like we can run so hard and we can run so fast and we can run so far when we have compassion being poured into us, someone cheering us on. Like, really, like those people that you mentioned, when I see them at church, like, it just fills my tank. And all they do is give me a 30-second, like, you're amazing. You do the hardest ministry at this church. Oh, I saw your message this weekend. It was life-changing. And I'm just like
go on,
filled.
Yeah.
Here I go.
Because
now who needs me?
Right.
I got this.
And they're coming up to you all about you. And it's not like it's all about me. Well, but no, it's true though that since you are the one constantly giving in a leadership role, that when there is someone who's coming and immediately pouring into you, it's, well, number one, it's strange because it doesn't usually happen.
Right.
But two, it feels so good.
It does.
Years ago when I was actually running and somewhat in shape, I ran a marathon, the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon. And I remember the thing that was really cool was that there's just hundreds of just random people, to me, random, on the side cheering you on. And, you know, they didn't know your name or anything, but they were just, you know, you're doing such a great job. No, it felt
it doesn't
really
matter.
encouraging.
Yeah.
And you would feed off of it. And
Totally.
that's somebody I didn't even know.
Right.
Whereas when there's someone that you do know coming up to you and pouring into you and how are you doing? And you're doing a great job.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that means that
and
much
what's the
more.
math on that? They say like for every, and I don't.
It's like 1 to 1,000.
Like
I think.
ratio of negative comments
I
to
could be
undo
wrong,
or
but
whatever.
It feels about right when you get that one negative that will ruin your day, and it takes about 1,000 good ones to fill
but it
that
is
tank
so
back up.
energizing. Like, and I feel like when I'm getting in that like compassion fatigue zone, I think it is really like I feel starved for my own compassion. And that's the crazy part, is that you don't need a lot. It's just a couple of people. The next one that I think is, so we talked about self-care, which that's so hot right now. Finding people who are compassionate toward you, your biggest cheerleaders, all that. The third one I would say is celebrating victories. So stopping and pausing, like when you've gotten through a really intense season of ministry, you gave it your all, you went for it, you dotted every I, crossed every T, you were, you poured out so much. I feel like you need to stop and celebrate with the people who helped make that happen and acknowledge the hard work. And by celebrate, I don't just mean saying the word
Good
celebrate.
job. We celebrated.
I just want to take this time to celebrate what we've done. Where is the celebration? I don't see one.
It's like saying, I apologize, but you never said you were sorry.
Was that directed at me?
110%. No.
I have nothing to apologize for. But I feel like celebration, like when you can like get on that peak and then you're like, look at everything we did. That's the motivation to go now to the next peak. But if it's like, no, let's go and keep climbing and if it's this endless, eternal climb, you're like, why are we climbing? Where are we going?
You're getting to a point where you are focused more on what's still ahead and less about, like, not so much you're looking at it. Okay, I can fit this into one sentence. I think you're looking more at still where we need to go versus look how far we've come.
Yes.
I did it.
Wow. Jeff
And
can
with
do tricks.
editing, that will be seamless. Probably not.
Yeah, I feel like it's, we can, and that's part of where I think this compassion fatigue comes from is time mismanagement. And we focus on next, go, push, until all of a sudden we're at this point where we're doing so much and accomplishing nothing because we're dead on the inside and we're completely empty and we're numb and we're just like going through the motions. But to really pause and celebrate and I guess we need to give some examples of what do we mean by celebration?
Yeah.
What I love doing with my team is doing every 3 or 4 months. We just call it leader night out. And so we all pile in the van. We go to an escape room, go get obscenely huge ice cream sundaes. We play games, get super competitive, laugh our heads off, relax. On a bigger scale, we'll do our leader retreat where we get someone to cover our entire junior high weekend service. And we go up to the mountains and we take hikes and we go shopping and we eat a ton of pie. And then I do this thing called the rug of affirmation with them because there's this really weird bearskin rug in this cabin and I sit on it and I invite all of them to sit on it with me. It's so awkward and I love it. I make them so uncomfortable in the best way ever. And then when they sit with me on the rug, I just shower them with all the good things that they've done the past season of ministry. And I just lay it on thick. And then we all get choked up and we play virtual reality video games for the rest of the night or Murder in the Dark. And we just act like kids.
I'm assuming Murder in the Dark is a game. Or is it kind of
How long have you been out of youth ministry,
time.
Boomer guy?
Because it could be one of those things where you are just kind of voting one off the island. But it's we do all
you
this
turn off all the
self-affirmation
lights,
and now I'm going to kill one
around.
of you. And we're going to be a better team for it.
They would all kill me. Michael
That's
Scott.
true. Especially for having them go on a bear rug with you.
They love it. They love it. But we have seriously so much fun. It's like winter camp without students. It's just
That's amazing.
Exactly. And we sleep and it's a nice cabin and it's beautiful. And you guys might be thinking, Guy, how big is your budget? I get all the food donated from parents who want to love on my leaders. And then the leaders chip in about $65 each for 2 nights, all their meals. They have no problem with it. So it costs me zero money. If you want to know more about that, send me an email. I can tell you how to do it. Easy peasy. Especially if you find a VRBO person who wants to love a ministry person, they give you a good deal. So anyways, celebration, that gives us the reset to let's do it again. But my pet peeve is when you make it to a peak and then all anyone can do is say,
look at the next peak.
Higher. Yeah. And then you're just
which is
I hate
fine,
this climb.
But when
this
there's
climb never ends.
When you don't recognize where you have been,
right?
Then and more of not just here's where we were, here's where we are. Now let's conquer the next mountain, but actually take an event or a significant moment to celebrate.
And it's an art too, because you do want to inspire your team. All right, let's go further. We can do it. We can go further.
And it's for what reason?
Exactly.
Just to go to the next
But when
peak.
you pause to celebrate, it's almost intrinsic for them. Let's ramp up and do it. You don't have to ramp them up. They're ramped up because they've rested, they've celebrated, they have a cheerleader, and they're ready to go. I mean, they told me at our last leader retreat, they're like, we would go anywhere for you. And I think it's I didn't tell them guys, I need you to go anywhere for me. It's just because of this rhythm we've built in of pedal to the metal, pause, rest, celebrate. Pedal to the metal, pause, rest, celebrate. And I think working in those rhythms of rest, and I think that's what we need to remember is our time management has to include those rhythms seasonally, like Mike Foster said, daily, hourly, whatever, but celebrate, have freaking fun.
Yeah.
Fun, guys. Don't underestimate the power of fun. A fantastic book is Have More Fun by Mandy Arioto.
I don't think that's how she pronounces her last name. I don't really know.
Well, Google it. You'll find it. I promise. Sorry, Mandy.
Yeah, I graduated with Mandy, so Hi, Mandy.
If you're watching, sorry I've mispronounced your last name. I thought you were a robot. And then lastly, I think we should just close with the example that Jesus gives. I mean, Jesus worked in rhythms of rest into his ministry. And I remember the first time that clicked for me. I heard a sermon on it or something, probably a self-care seminar, but of Jesus, like getting away from the crowds, like going to the lonely places, even if it took maybe him getting up early to be alone, if it took getting in a boat, going to the other side, even though the people followed him. But Jesus, in his humanness, knew that the weight of the care and the work that we do, we cannot risk losing our compassionate edge, because we're in the business. I used air quotes in case you're listening on podcast. We're in the business of people. So let's end with this kind of gut check question of, are you more passionate about your position than the people? Because if we're just passionate about, I like my position, it's cush, I've climbed the ranks, it's like clockwork now, I like being in charge, I like my leadership, or are you passionate still about the people? Remember who you were when you first started. That enthusiasm. And where did it go? Because you can get it back.
Yeah.
You can.
Wow, that is awesome. That's a lot of really good, practical, and useful tips for pastors, actually leaders in general,
right,
to be able to implement those things to avoid burnout and to be able to get out of compassion fatigue and not let it lead to burnout. So cool.
All right.
Thank you. Well, if you guys are watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe and hit that like button. Leave some comments below. Tell us how you deal with compassion fatigue or burnout. And then if you're listening on podcast, please remember to subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for checking out this episode. We hope that it provided a ton of insight for you to create health in yourself, your ministry, and your church.
And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Ministry Coach podcast wherever you're watching or listening. And it would mean so much to us if you would rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts.
And we'd also encourage you to share it with a friend so that it can go to help more people. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.